Hi, this is Eric B. Welcome to 7 Days of Satch presented by Chevron. This presentation with Wycliffe Gordon and Fred Kasten is produced by French Quarter Festival, Inc. Special thanks to all partners and sponsors, including Chevron, New Orleans Jazz National Historical Park, GE, Jack Daniels, Abita Brewing Company, WWL-TV Channel 4, New Orleans Jazz Museum, the Times-Picayune, the New Orleans Advocate, and NOLA.com, WWOZ 90.7 FM, and Offbeat Magazine. 2020 marks the 20th anniversary of Satchmo SummerFest, dedicated to the life and legacy in the music of New Orleans' own Louis Satchmo Armstrong. This year, we cannot be live with you, so we've joined forces with a few of our partners to produce a multi-platform celebration in honor of Satch. Coming up next, we'll be showing footage from 2014 Satchmo SummerFest Symposium series titled Hello Pops, featuring renowned trombonist Wycliffe Gordon and interviewer Fred Kasten.
And I mean, that's kind of where it started. But I really wanted to play drums because, see, this is when I was 12. But when I was in the first grade, I got a chance to hear a band for the first time, and it was the Army Band from Augusta, Georgia, and it was a big band. They played together, and then they introduced the instruments by having someone from each section play. So the saxophonist played. I said, that's nice. Trombonist played. I said, it's cool. Trumpet played. I was like, all right. Piano played. I heard that all my life. The electric bass player played. It was, I said, I like that. And then the drummer started playing. Like, boom, kick, the boom, do. I was like, that's it. That's what I wanted to play. And I begged my mom, for years, I wanted to get some drums. And she was like, absolutely not. You all make enough noise without, you beat on enough. So she wouldn't get me the drums, but I begged and pleaded at the age of 12 until, they got me a trombone. And that's when I first started playing.
Did you like it pretty quickly when you started taking it up?
I think so. I mean, I loved music. Mm-hmm. And playing trombone, I also got a chance to hear the tuba. I played trombone for a year in the 7th grade, and when I went to the 8th grade, you had, like I said, you had to have at least one elective. So there was PE and there was band. So we got to take, I think, 3 electives. And so I took another band class. I took where I began to play tuba. So I kind of fell in love with it, but that was also the year that I was introduced to jazz. A great aunt in my family had passed, and amongst the things bequeathed to the family was a 5-record collection set of jazz that went from the early slave chants to the modern jazz in that compilation, which was like Sonny Rollins' quartet playing Sonny Moon for 2, Dizzy Gillespie's big band. But of all the music that I listened to, what I loved was the music of New Orleans, and particularly a tune by Louis Armstrong called the Keyhole Blues. And that was my introduction to jazz, or traditional jazz, as we know it. Because when I was in high school, we had our jazz, which was like Chuck Mangione, Feel So Good, Herb Alpert, and that kind of thing. So my buddies, they used to pick at me. They said, yeah, we all like jazz, but Cliff, he likes that deep jazz. and that's what they called it. The jazz that was, recorded many years, before we were even born. But that was my introduction to jazz. And, I fell in love with playing trombone. But once I found this music from New Orleans, then I really began to practice. I really dug it. So,
why don't you give us a few bars of the Keyhole Blues?
Keyhole Blues. Well, again, this is by Louis Armstrong, Hot 5s and Hot 7s, and it was the one tune that I played, I think, every day, several times on the record. And, it's one of the tunes that I wanted to record. Just a little bit of Pops playing his original composition, the Keyhole Blues. that's a little bit of it.
Keyhole. So that spoke to you loud and clear and got your interest. Did you start sort of following that initial introduction deeper into that music then?
Well, the thing that I liked about it, like most teenagers, we were into the popular music of our time, and bands that had horns, like Earth, Wind, and Fire, Kool and the Gang, and most of the band that had horns, that's what we were listening to, the pop music. But they were using synthesizers, and we love those things too. Electric bass, the light shows, all of the things that now have kind of, I think, taken over the music aspect, or they become more important than the musical aspect of, of entertainment. But I like those things too. But listening to this music on this record, this LP, for the young folks that may not know what that is, it's a black disc.
It's a
now I just have to check because I work in lots of schools, and sometimes I talk about LPs and cassettes. They have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. But in listening to that, it sounded like the instrument that I played. Yes, I love the electric bass. Yes. I love the keyboards, the synthesizers, but when you listen to Louis Armstrong Keyhole Blues, it's the trumpet, trombone, clarinet, tuba, piano, drums, and I think and even the banjo. It's all acoustic instruments. So when I would when I would listen to it, I try to imitate every instrument. I mean, I wasn't really playing trumpet at that time, but I tried to imitate what Pops played on the trombone. I tried to imitate what Johnny Dodds played on the clarinet. I do that on the trombone, the tuba part, and of course the trombone part. And I would imitate even Pops, scat singing. So I would try to do everything on the trombone. But and there was another tune on there. It wasn't Louis Armstrong playing, but When the Saints Go Marching In. And my junior high school band played that year. So I began to transcribe the trombone solo from that. I didn't even know what a transcription was. I was just copying what he was doing, and my friends was like, wow, Wycliffe can play a nice solo. Where did he come up with that from? And then they came over one day in the garage, and they heard me playing that record. They said, oh, that's where he got it from. But, it's the music of New Orleans, it was something that always drew me to the city, the music. Particularly the music of Louis Armstrong, but the music of New Orleans nonetheless.
But you had some success with like a funk band, I think you had in high school?
Yeah. Yeah, we had a funk band, and it was called Triumph 2. We named our band after Michael Jackson, and his brothers got together, and they did a Triumph tour. So we called our band Triumph 2, and then back in 1983, we were entering into a competition for the first time at the Augusta Exchange Club Fair. And for us, that was kind of big time just to get a chance to perform with our band. And I know that's a history and tradition in many cities all around the world, garage bands and whatnot. So that was our band. And back in '83, we entered into a talent competition. And it was down to three folks. It was Wycliffe Gordon and the Triumph Band, a guy named Warren Parsons who played saxophone, great jazz saxophonist there in Augusta, and this other guy who sang, his name was Clarence. I can't think of his last name now, but he had a song that he recorded, and we heard it on the radio, and it was like, wow, we're competing against him, because anytime you heard your music on the radio in high school, that's like big time. So we were playing, and we were singing. And I was watching a video or something. I said, only thing we're not doing is we're not dancing. I said, we made it to the finals. I said, let's put in an 8 or 16 bar dance routine with the band. And so we played, and we went on. I think we may have gone on last because we had 6 members in the band. And we did, I think it may have been Hard for the Money by, who's it, Donna Summer? We were doing that song, and then it came down. We practiced our dance routine, and it came that time for the breakdown, and we had our white gloves on, and we went down and we did our dance routine, came back in place and played. And I don't think that was the thing that helped us to win, but it was certainly something. It spoke a lot about just the entertainment aspect of our performance. And anyway, to make a long story short, if I can do that now, they asked us as they were tallying up the scores. They called out Clarence first, it was third place, and then they were about to say second place or the run-up, and then, Juan Parsons was the other guy's name, and my name being Wycliffe, we thought they was gonna say our name, so they said in second place is Juan Parsons, and that was like we won the 1983 Augusta Exchange Club Fair, which none of you all probably have no idea what that is, but for us that was like the equivalent to winning a Grammy. For us it was like, wow, we won, and we won $300 to split between 6 people, but we didn't care about the money.
Yeah.
And just recently, a buddy of mine about 6 or 7 years ago, we would pass the trophy around to the different households. And me and my brother, we were in the band, so we'd keep it 2 weeks, and everyone else would keep it for a week. Wound up at my mother's house. A buddy of mine got married about 7, 8 years ago, and I said, hey man, present for you. He said, this is our trophy from 1983.
Oh,
So, but yeah, it was that was pretty big for us back then.
Yeah, nice recognition. It gave you some feedback of a very positive kind.
Yes.
Well, you by then had music grabbed a hold of you pretty solid. Was it in your mind that was what you were going to do?
I think at age 13, when I was playing in junior high school, we had a concert. It was 13 right before I turned 14, and right after I started listening to this jazz music on this CD. The CD, it wasn't a CD. CDs weren't made back then. On the LP, and a buddy of mine, they said, you know what, we had solos in the junior high school. A lot of the music has the solos written out, and the students would just kind of stick to that, especially if you didn't have any experience or very little experience improvising. And I made a bet with a buddy of mine. His name was Brian Hillman. I said, I'm going to play half of my written solo, and I'm going to make up the rest. He said, I'm going to do the same thing. So we made a bet. It was the spring concert of the 8th grade year. It was the last year that they were going to have junior high school, 8th and 9th grade. They were moving to the middle school system. So the 9th and 10th grade were then going to be going to the high school that I attended. So all of the high school students had come to the concert to listen to us play music that they'd all played. And I had just that one solo, and it was only like 16, maybe 24 bars. And, played it, and I just said, you're just going to go for it. Not really realizing, probably didn't sound that great, but I just kind of went for it, and so did Brian. And it was successful in that, the applause that we got from the students, and some of the students came up and said, that was a really, really great solo. And I said, you know what, I think I want to be a musician. I want to play music, and I want to play jazz for a living. And I said that when I was 13, and I say that to students oftentimes just to, be careful what it is that you ask for, that you say that you want to do. Now, of course, I wanted to box. I wanted to play professional football and all of that, but music was always a part of, my growing up. When I went to high school, coach saw us outside one day. He said, I want you to try out for the football team. I said, that'd be great. But my band director said, it's band or football. I was like, well, I went through one season, saw a couple of my buddies get hurt, and I was like, football is just during the fall semester, band is year-round. I was like, well, that was a no-brainer for me. I said, I love to play on the football team, but I think I'm going to stay in the band. And, and that's what I did throughout high school.
Yeah. Were you starting to write music at all in those days?
Well, before I started playing trombone, I took piano lessons at age 11. Me and my sister Karen at the same time. She's 2 years younger than I. And once I started playing trombone, once I got in the band, I took piano lessons for 1 more year, because even though piano lessons were fun, but it was always one-on-one with the teacher. And other than playing with my sister at home, there was not a lot of interaction with other students. A band, room full of kids. It was like, I want to stay in the band, and I told my mom I didn't want to take piano lessons anymore, but I continued to play for my youth choir at church. I just didn't study with the teacher anymore, a piano teacher anymore. And so I continued to play by ear. But then I started to write and to compose kind of at an early age. I mean, I have songs that I would just try to sit down to the piano and make up, but nothing major until later on when I started studying composition.
Was that in college that you began composition studies?
Yes, it was. I started writing a little bit before I got in college, but once I started studying composition, then I began to compose a lot more. Not just jazz, but all of the music that I like to listen to. Mm-hmm. Growing up in church, that would be gospel music. And
Right.
having listened to classical music all of my life, my earlier years in life, I would mess around composing classical music, but mainly, pop songs and maybe a jazz song here or there.
In there. That was at Florida A&M,
Yes, Florida A&M University.
and you studied music there?
I studied probably for the first semester.
You were enrolled in music classes.
I was. I mean, I did what most people did do when they go to college. I studied. Most. No, I mean, I had a good time in college. I was in the Florida A&M marching band, and that was and I was a music major there. But going to college was the first time it became apparent to me that if I didn't get up and go to class, then I wasn't going to get a spanking. So, I mean, I still had to go to class because my mom had a long reach. She said, "Look, if your grades start dropping, that's not going to be acceptable." Even though I wasn't in high school anymore, just a couple of times. But I really enjoyed my college years, and I had many great experiences and opportunities. Positive and not so positive, but that is where.
Well, that's part of an education.
Then that's exactly right. But that is where I got a chance to. I met Wynton Marsalis during my sophomore year, and he came to our jazz band rehearsal, which was probably the first time everybody showed up. But we got a chance to play for him and got his information. We kind of stayed in touch. And when he called me to come out to play with his band, he had his pianist Marcus Roberts call me. I was playing piano in church, working at Pizza Hut, and going to school. And Marcus Roberts called me, and I thought that he was one of my frat brothers or somebody calling for some free pizza. So I answered the phone like, "Yeah, what?" I mean, because I would close. The best thing about closing in a food restaurant is you never have to worry about being hungry. You can always had pizza and ramen noodles in my freezer. And, I mean, good, nutritious college food.
Yes.
Anyway, but yeah, Marcus called me, and of course, when I went out, I was thoroughly unprepared. But that is where I got a chance to meet him, and over the years after getting my butt kicked, and musically in at the Caravan of Dreams in Texas in the spring of '88. Later on that year, he called me to join them at Blues Alley in Washington, D.C., and I was a little better prepared, and that's when he asked me, say, "Well, we're working on this music for this Christmas CD called Crescent City Christmas Card. Do you want to play on it?" I said, "Well, yeah, sure." And that was in my fourth year of college, and we did the CD. And then he said, "What are you doing during the summer?" I said, "Well, I normally go home to Georgia, do some construction work, make money to pay for books, lights, and that kind of thing, because my scholarship didn't cover summer school, even though it was a full scholarship." And at the end of my fourth year, I wasn't particularly happy with my situation there, and I was talking with another band member about my situation in college, and went and said, "Wow, I thought things were a little better." He said, "Do you want to stay out and play for a little while?" And I thought about it for all of about 10 seconds, and I said, "Yes, I do." And what started out as a temporary summer job became my career. Mm-hmm. In music, so that's kind of how that happened. I know you didn't ask that, but some kind of way I segued.
It worked. Now that Caravan of Dreams gig, was that when Wes Anderson joined the band?
That was the beginning of the Septet. Wynton's quintet had broken up. I think that's when Branford and the guys left to go play with Sting, and he was reforming, vamping his band. And Herlin Riley and Reginald Veal were in the rhythm section, who are also from New Orleans, the greatest musicians in the world ever. Rhythm section to play with. And Marcus Roberts was in the band, but he was leaving to start his own solo career. Okay. Yeah. And by the time I'd come along, Wes was there, but Wes was being, tried out at the same time.
He was like was at Southern at the time. And,
pretty much. When Wes was
similar situation to yours.
Yes. So the Caravan of Dreams was my first gig. I think it may have been Wes's third. But Wynton had a quintet, and he just started having, I guess, ideas that he wanted to have a larger ensemble. So Wes had joined the band. So by the time I'd actually come out in that spring of summer of 1989, it was June 6th. My first gig was in Charleston, South Carolina. I'll never forget it. I called him on my birthday. So May 29th, I said, "Went school's out. I'm ready to do some work for the summer." He said, "Call my manager, and he'll fly you to the next city we're going to be in." That was Charleston, South Carolina. And that was the first gig, and it was just my summer job. And about 3 or 4 days later, we were down in Aruba, and I was having a conversation with Eric Reed, who was just filling in for Marcus Roberts at the time. And that's when Wynton asked me, and I said, "Well, yes." I knew that it was what I wanted to do. There was no question about it. I always knew I wanted to do something in music, and went to school to major in music education. I figured, I'd at least be able to teach, but I knew that I was going to do something in music. But here came the opportunity for me to do something that I always wanted to do, and to perform with musicians at such, a high level. I mean, which is a whole nother conversation coming in where I came in the band, which was at the bottom of the totem pole. But I was the 7th member, and that made it the Wynton Marsalis Septet.
That was a great band.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was a wonderful band. I always loved that record you guys did for the score for the movie that was shot here, Tune In Tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. The movie stayed out for about 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, the movie didn't make it, but the music has lasted.
It was just fun. And as I try to encourage students at any level to just stay around folks they can be an inspiration to. Everybody in the band, they played miles above my ability to play. I could hear what they were playing, but it just reminded me that I just had to go back to the basics. So doing that film, we shot it in our scenes in Wilmington, North Carolina, at one of the film places where they shoot film. But
sound stages.
Yeah, it was fun. Just the music was always fun, because the musicians always, just like Louis Armstrong, they were always trying to be original. Never really settle for just let's do it this way all the time. Unlike when you're doing some shows and the music has to be that way. But it was like they're always creative. And being in that situation, you just you never know what you're gonna get. And most of the time it's gonna be good, and there are gonna be times that is great, but in the attempt to play great and to give a great performance, that's what they always did. And it's just, you always had to stay on your toes.
Yeah, when you're around colleagues like that, it's very, you better get your act together, right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Well, you told me that back at A&M, you had been in every kind of musical ensemble there was that they offered there, the choirs, everything.
Yeah, I was in the marching band. I had to take piano. I was a music major, so you had to take brass wind techniques, woodwind techniques, string techniques, voice techniques. So I got a chance to interact with, I was in all of the band programs. That's the marching band, symphonic band, jazz band. I was in the pep band. I was even going to join a percussion ensemble. I said, wait a minute, that's a bit much. So, I stopped there, but I did play with the piano guild and got a chance to interact with the choir also. So I was anything music, I just I'll do it.
Yeah. Now, how long was the Septet together? That was several years, wasn't it?
Septet went and disbanded the Septet in 1995. And he told us about that in the middle of the year. He wanted to begin to concentrate more on developing, what's now Jazz at Lincoln Center. And so I was in the Septet from June of 89 until 95, and then immediately I was in the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra right after that, because we all had first dibs at being in the band, and there wasn't really a formal audition process. But being in his band, we played every type of jazz there was. Modern, bebop, New Orleans. We'd even play, gospel music. And most of the musicians, like Hurlin and Reginald, Eric Reed, myself, had an upbringing and background in gospel from our interactions, just growing up in church.
Right.
So a lot of times, like when we did the CD called In This House on This Morning, Oftentimes, a lot of that music that Wynton wrote was inspired by us clowning between, we'd be talking about making fun of, but enjoying, not in a way of ridiculing, but the way that people would sing in church, the way that the deacons would pray in church. And, they were from New Orleans, I was from Georgia, Eric Reed lived in California, but had his roots. His dad was a pastor. In Philadelphia, and they're being from North Carolina. So there was like a common language that we had and that we brought to the situation. It's like when I'm asked about performing and playing with musicians, I try to play with musicians that, jazz is cool, but jazz is an amalgamation of many different things. And it's so if you have church background, gospel, if you can play gospel, if you can play classical, if you study classical, then it's only really going to enhance your ability to play jazz. Because I've hired pianists from time to time. They play great jazz, but you ask them to play the Lord's Prayer, or you ask them to play Amazing Grace, and they start playing like these flat sevens. I said, wait a minute, it's just to try it. Yeah. And it's, they're not really used to that sound, and it becomes more about the feel, and then how even how to follow a musician that's singing. And I learned that from playing piano in church. So and in playing jazz or in playing music, because jazz is, again, it's a term, it's a category. That's something I guess we have to do in order to separate things, so to speak. But in doing that, oftentimes younger musicians ask me, what do you like to play with, whether it's drummers, piano players, or bass players? I said, I love playing with Hurlin and Reginald because they have that church background, they have that New Orleans background, they know the history of their instruments from the early 1900s forward. So if I'm playing with someone that can do that, and playing in Wynton's band, we had that. Right. It's like I'm free to play from any period, idiom in jazz, any style of jazz, and they would nail it. It's like it's trying to play Amazing Grace with the pianist that's trying to play jazz or something that's hip. I said the hippest thing to do really is just to, kind of play simple. And I remember one time we challenged Eric Reed, who could do that, to play a hymn without playing any jazz chords. And he was like, he got through about 6 bars. And was like, no, it's not that one.
No.
And it's just, when you have that in the foundation of the band, the bass and drums mainly, but you have a full rhythm section, it's like, that's one of the it's one of the greatest feelings that you can have, because you can play anything. Right. You want to play Monk, we can play Monk. If you want to play James Cleveland, we can play James Cleveland. If you want to play Aretha Franklin, if you want to play funk, we can do that. And being in the band with those musicians, we could do all of that, and had all of that vocabulary to enhance any one style that we wanted to play. So
bring it into play whenever you felt it was going to be the best way to communicate whatever the idea was at the moment.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the nice things about young Kyle Roussel. To play with you last night. I think he comes out of the church, or certainly seems that is imbued in his playing.
He does. It was one tune that we played last. I didn't really know. I played with him a few years ago when I was here for Jazz Fest, and I had to get someone to hire some musicians here, and I was playing with Hurlin Riley, and he said, Kyle, and I didn't, I was paying attention to him then, but last night when we were playing in a more intimate setting, he did some things. I said, okay. That's from the church, and so he can play the he does have.
He's broadened his palette some over the last couple of years, but when I first started hearing him, it was very much church influence playing.
Yeah, which is a great thing. A lot of the drummers that have the great feels, it comes out of playing in a situation like that, when you have to accompany a band or a choir or a room full of people. And like oftentimes when I talk about playing with Hurlin Riley, who's another great musician from here, it's like when I was in the big band, I always felt like when he played, he put his arms around the whole band. Yeah. Like he knew everything that was going on across the band. It was never just about his drum set. He knew all the parts. And it's like, and when you're playing with somebody like that, that kind of communication and understanding about the music, it just enhances the music for us. And I mean, for the listening audience, I think it's going to be good and, maybe great.
Yeah, right.
But for us, it's like when we were on the road at one point in time, close to 300 days out of the year. And you'd see musicians in the band playing. So we used to each other. You may see us for a night or two, if it's in the club, if you come every night, 4 or 5 days, 4 or 5 evenings. And you'll see someone just kind of step off. They're playing at the top of their ability, and it's like, wow, man. And sometimes the cats will come off stage, say, hey, man, you got to forgive me for what I sounded like. It's like, man, what are you talking about? It's killing. But that's when you're going for something and you don't quite get it, and it's like, you just have to go and work it out a little more, and it's just a personal thing. We all go through it. And then you see them succeed, it's like, man, you're on fire tonight. Yeah. And on fire for us is different from his regular playing may be on fire for everyone else, but when you're with somebody on the road that much, you get a chance to hear that. And the greatest feeling would be when it would happen with the whole band. Yeah. The whole band is just... we're playing at the height of creativity. Everything we done worked on, it just kind of goes out the window, but everybody's being creative and it works. And like I said, out of close to 300 days on the road per year, it would happen once, maybe twice. And when it would happen, oftentimes it wouldn't be recorded. But I imagine that's a kind of spiritual high, for lack of a better term, word that I always want to reach towards. So when you feel that, it's like there's nothing like that. We get on the bus that night and say, man, it happened again. Mm-hmm. It happened, and we know when it happened, and oftentimes it's never recorded, but it's like at the height of your playing, and then you go for it, you step out there, and and you get it. Because oftentimes it doesn't happen, but when it happens with the whole band, man, that's those nights with the Septet that made oftentimes you see us on stage. It's like, oh yeah, I love what you all do. You're playing, you're performing. That's 2.5, 3 hours of our day. Those other 21 hours, yes, it's no joke. The hotels, the buses, and we traveled pretty good, but when you're always moving around, you're not sleeping in the same situation. The food may be good, right, and like now, it's like I've done that. I've been there, I've done that. Now I just kind of want to be in a place for 3 or 4 days. I'm not interested in the one-nighters anymore. I did that 25 years ago. I was like, man, it's okay. I've been there, I've done that. It's been fun. So nothing against the young folks that want to do it, or the older folks that want to continue to do it. It's just like, okay, I kind of want to sit still for a little bit and enjoy life.
When those moments come, though, that's what you work for all those days in between, right?
Yes, it is. It makes the not most of the time. I mean, when we're traveling, it's just like, oh man, another 12-hour bus ride or 18 hours on a plane. It's like, and you walk on the bandstand, and time the first note starts, it all disappears. It's like, okay, well, this is what I said I wanted to do, and those few hours make the rest of it. It makes it worth it for us.
It's like we said earlier, it's got its rewards for sure.
Yes.
What about leading your own bands, Wycliffe? When did you start doing that?
Wow. I left the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra in 2000 to take my first teaching job. I wanted to do things a little differently. It was great to be in a situation where folks, we had a steady job. I mean, the benefits of that, and that's what I had. But I got a teaching opportunity at Michigan State. It was going to be a little less rewarding financially, but I felt like I wanted to take the chance and maybe develop some of the things that I wanted to develop. Being in the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, the programs were decided by someone else. What I played, pretty much, other than my solos, the repertoire was going to be determined by someone else. And, I kind of had a vision of what I wanted to do. And it was great to have a great gig. When I decided to leave, I told Wynton, I think about 6 months before, I said, I'm going to be leaving the band. He came to my show at the Village Vanguard, and I said, I want to talk to you. So I think I'm going to be leaving the band. I'd been to Michigan and I did some work, and then they were getting ready to try to do a jazz studies program, create 2 full-time tenure-track positions. And I said, you know what, I think I want to do this. I had young son at that time, just born. He was now 15. And I said, I just kind of wanted to restructure my life a little, continue to play, but I wanted to do things a little where I had a little more control of my time. And it was difficult at first getting gigs, 'cause for the first 2 or 3 years, I had a manager then, and said they called places and want to book Wycliffe Gordon. They said, yeah, we love Wycliffe Gordon, but we'll see him when he comes through at Wynton. And for I love Wycliffe Gordon's playing. Yeah, we'll see him when he comes through with Wynton. I'm like, I'm not with Wynton anymore. I have my own thing. And I mean, even now, I run into folks in New York. Some, enjoyed you with the band last year. It's like, I hadn't played with that band since 2000, but thank you. I mean, and it's a compliment in a sense to know that my presence there. There were some rewards, and I did have fun, and it was great, but it was just time to move on and do other things. So, and that's when I did it back in 2000, and then eventually I began to get work and had to put out a PSA that I'm the Wycliffe Gordon. I have my own band,
Have trombone, will travel.
Yeah, and started to record, and a lot of the things. That I was able to do and to accomplish. I don't think I would have been able to do some of it, but not nearly as much in education as far as recording. Had I stayed on the road on that schedule with the band, I'm still in touch with the guys. I talk to them from time to time, and it's great. So many trombone players came up to me after I left. How do I get this gig? I said, I don't know. Go to rehearsal, go talk to Wynton, play for him. He'll hear you play. I said, there was no formal audition process for me. Like I said, when the Septet disbanded in 1995 and we started Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, or concentrating on jazz at Lincoln Center in 1996, we all had jobs because it didn't matter what music we played, whether it was Monk, Charles Mingus, we could play all of it because in Wynton's band, that's what we studied. So until old folks started leaving, and then eventually I left. It was a great situation. So I got a chance to, like I said, it was difficult at first, but I held a teaching job there at Michigan State. I taught there for 2 years full time, and then Juilliard started their jazz studies program, and I taught there for 7 years. And then I moved on to Manhattan School, which is where I'm currently teaching, but I also just took an artist in residency in my hometown in Augusta, Georgia,
cool. Yeah.
Which I'm really happy about. It's not a major music school yet. It's not, not known, but it's in my hometown. And, my mom's there, my roots are there. So at least for 6 weeks per semester, I'm going to be, I'll be home, and we'll be developing a jazz studies program.
Nice.
But, education is always, and jazz education has always been an important part of what I do. So whether I'm performing or not, there would always be some type of educational component attached to it.
Well, I'd always known you as a trombonist, but you play wonderful trumpet. Is that something you've done for a long time?
I've always played trumpet. When we were in, tuba was my second band instrument, trombone being the first. But by the time I got into high school, our parents would take turns, with band picking up, going to band practice, going to football games. We carpool. Right. Me and my brother Lucius, my buddy Rod, and another buddy Juan. So the parents would take turns, and sometimes they just come over to the house for the weekend, and we play football or baseball or whatever. They leave their horns at the house, and if you left your horn in our house, when I was home, it got played. So, and I always knew how to play the trumpet, but then being a professional musician, I always worked with trumpet players. So there was no need unless he wanted second trumpet or something. So trombone was my main instrument. But oftentimes I'd hang around the band room. I would just try to play just about anything. So I played 23 instruments, but I'm not going to travel with them. So mainly I get hired to play trombone, but trumpet is something, like when I did the CD Hello Pops, it was one of my most fun projects to date. I thought that my manager, who's here, she was we were at an APAP conference, and I had made this nice brochure of all the shows that I do, and they were like, well, yeah, you have this show, Tribute to the Trombone, this Duke Ellington show, and someone from France said, well, next year is going to be the centennial of the birth of Louis Armstrong. Does he have a Louis Armstrong program? She said, yes. And I'd always played on him. She said, well, I hope you have a Louis Armstrong program, because I just told these folks that you did. I said, well, yeah, I do. I can do it, but I was always the side man. I played tuba, trombone, and maybe would sing a song or two, but so I said, well, she got 2 bookings, one in France and one somewhere else. I said, well, I guess I better do a CD then. So I started thinking about doing a CD, and I always wanted to do it, and I always played on shows, loved the music, but I was like, well, all right, who am I going to get to play trumpet? And I said, well, you know what, if I do that, it can be my CD, but if I hire a trumpeter, then that person is probably going to be the focus, because Louis Armstrong played trumpet. And I said, you know what, I know the solos, I know the tunes, I love the music. I said, I'm going to play trumpet. So, and then when I decided to do it, I said, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play trumpet. So, and I didn't want to do all of the most popular tunes of Louis Armstrong. Some of them are popular tunes, but I wanted to do the tunes that meant a lot to me in terms of my formative growth in music through listening to the music of Louis Armstrong. So, and of course, Keyhole Blues was one of those tunes. Right. So I started playing the trumpet, and a mouthpiece maker that I was introduced to, Peter Pickett. He was at his shop. I wanted to do my own line of trombone mouthpieces. And I saw this mouthpiece. I said, well, what's that? And he said, well, it's a hybrid trumpet mouthpiece, something that someone had developed out in California, I believe. And I put it on, and I could play the regular trumpet mouthpiece, but I wasn't about to go through 2 or 3 years of Clark studies and the Arbenz book just to make a record. And I was like, I could do that, but then I started playing this mouthpiece, and it felt a little strange at first. And I was like, after normally about 20 minutes, 15 minutes actually on a regular trumpet mouthpiece, I'm like, oh man, it's a different different set of muscles in your face when you're using it in your embouchure when you're playing with a small mouthpiece. But this, I can go between the trumpet, trombone, and tuba mouthpiece all day long. Oh. And I was like, I started playing this. Play, and I was like, my chops still feel good. And, I continued to play. I was like, I want one of those mouthpieces. And he made me 4 of them, and I narrowed it down to 2, narrowed it down to 1. I said, I think I like this one, but such and such. And he made it right there on the spot. Great mouthpiece maker. And April introduced me to him, and I said, that's the mouthpiece I want to play on the trumpet. And, I made this record and CD, and I called some friends in New York. I was like, I want to do this CD. And, oftentimes the record companies used to have lots of control over the artists. And, I try to encourage artists, and particularly my students, to get into the entrepreneurial spirit, right, and to, to produce your own your product, or to what is the word I'm looking for? To not just promote, but to to record and produce your own CD. Go through that whole process, because a lot that we don't get a chance to talk about is the business side of music, and that's where a lot of musicians get dumped on, because we'll play for free. I tell people all the time, yeah, I'm playing for free. You're just paying for me to come here. You're not paying me to play. I'll play. But oftentimes, we do that. And most musicians or artists in general, we tend to be bad business people. And, I learned a long time ago to just try to get bits and pieces of that together. So putting the CD together from pre-production to recording to post-production and all of that, it's there's a lot that goes into that. But this, Hello Pops, it was a fun project. And Whether I get it from the critics or not, no. Some of my best critics are at home. You know, my family, like my younger brother, when he heard the CD, he said, "I think that's my favorite CD that I've heard you do." He loves all the other ones, but he said, but he was in the garage. He's 4 years younger than me. When I used to play keyhole blues all the time, you know, and I used to tell him if I didn't want to get up, I said, put the needle back on that record. She started over for me again, and it would just be the same thing over and over again. So, you know, doing this project was fun. And I mean, and I recorded it almost 2 years ago. So, and I never really wanted to do tribute records, but in the spirit of Louis Armstrong, who always loved as a musician, I began to learn more and read more about his life as a person, and that's what really made his music so beautiful, and how he just touched everyone. And I was like, wow. I didn't know that when I was, 13, 14 years old, why I fell in love with the music, but I loved it. And I always talk about, it's like, man, every time I listen to this music, I smile, I feel good inside. And even though some of my colleagues would tend to say, oh, that's that old jazz, and, he's not playing anything, it's not hip like bebop. And it's like, man, how can you hate someone that loves everybody? And that comes across in his music. And in the tune, I like to write music, compositions, and was not so good at doing lyrics. And a buddy of mine that I played with, Jay Lenhart, he said, man, just keep writing, write. And the lyrics to the tune is like, hello, Pops. It's like I'm having a conversation with Louis. How you doing? You mean the world to me. Hello, Pops. What's brewing? You lived your life so fancy-free. You stopped wars with your music, made friends of your enemies. If I can do that for 10 million, and I said million, billion, trillion, and quadrillion, it wouldn't amount to what you did for me. So hello, Pops, what's a cooking? I'm probably part of some of those red beans and rice. Hello, Pops, how's it looking? You made living down here quite nice. If I could do that for 10 quadrillion, wouldn't amount to what you did for me. And I just said, hello, 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 Pops. So it's a simple song about that expresses my sentiments about Louis Armstrong, first as a musician, because that's what we all know him as. But the music was just a manifestation of who he was or is as a person. And Duke Ellington gave him one of the greatest compliments ever, and we all know who Duke Ellington is. He said that, Pops, what I love about Louis Armstrong, he became rich, became famous, an ambassador to the world from the United States, and particularly from New Orleans, but he never hurt anybody along the way. And I was like, wow. And you think about it. I mean, and Pops he grew up here, in this city in the worst of circumstances. And just recently I got a chance to do something at the Louis Armstrong house. It's a museum now, but the house where he lived that Lucille, picked out for him. And his manager, Joe Glazer, said, man, you made lots of money. Why don't you get you a mansion out here on Long Island and come and live. And I mean, he was in Chicago before he moved to New York. That's another story. I do a residency in Chicago called the Louis Armstrong Legacy Program and Celebration. But, we drive up to the neighborhood. I was like, wow, it's just a regular neighborhood. And Pops was like, why would I want to go and exclude myself? I like these people. I love this neighborhood. I love the kids in the neighborhood. Used to call them my little ice cream eaters. And, and he was just the people. They looked out for his house, the barbershop, Joe's barbershop around the corner. He was a people person. And no matter, how high he had gotten in life and how successful he was, his feet were always on the ground and in touch with, human beings, with humanity. Right. And I think that's the thing that made his music speak to me, even when I didn't have the vocabulary to explain it or even to understand it. It reached me, and even now it's even more important and poignant. So in those songs that I recorded, and there's 3 original compositions on there also. Yeah. I talk about, I did a song called Toast My Bread. I didn't record it on this one, but I did a song called Meatball 1, 2, 3. And, Pops used to like to write about food, cornet, chop suey, potato head blues, strutting with some barbecue, lots of tunes. So I was in the dressing room of a gig one night. and I was just thinking about meatballs for whatever reason, and and I said, 1, 2, 3. I wanted to play the trumpet, the trombone, and the tuba, and that was one of the tunes that I recorded, and I just overdubbed. But he was just influential in so many ways.
Yeah, that's right. Across a wide spectrum of things, he still speaks to us very meaningfully.
Yes, indeed.
You've had that trombone in your hand for about an hour now. Would you play us a little something to wrap this up?
Sure. I'll do that.
Wycliffe Gordon, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm gonna play something. One thing I like to do is I talk about Sing It First. It's a book about my unique approach to playing trombone. That's what the publishing company came up with. It's not really unique. People have been doing it for many years, and I use Louis Armstrong as my greatest example in terms of a singing approach to developing how you want to play. And I'm not going to do a trombone master class now, but the way that he played was the same way that he sang. And, so there was the only difference was the trumpet was just an octave higher than what he sang. But anyway, it's a unique approach to trombone playing. And I said, I wanted to do the book for brass or just for instrumentalists in general. And they said, no, we have someone working on a trumpet book. We'll just make it for trombone. But the concepts of singing, so whether you want to work on your double tonguing or anything, and I'll play an improvisation that'll just demonstrate some of those things.
Wycliffe Gordon, ladies and gentlemen.